food and fishing ερχόμαστε. Today begins a journey unlike any other. I am at the airport in Crete heading to Athens. There I'll have the pleasure and honor of meeting Dr. Koki Tsubakihara, pro staff of BlueBlue from Japan. We have the chance to talk in person in a powerful podcast of full knowledge and experience focusing on the slow jigging technique. At this point, I'd like to thank Germania, the official distributor of BlueBlue in Greece, Cyprus and Italy, for their hospitality. Stay tuned because this journey is just getting started.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we have a special guest from Japan. So,
nice to meet you.
Me too.
I'm Koki Tsubakihara from BlueBlue, Tokyo, Japan.
How long you have been fishing with slow jigging?
So when I was 12, I started my jigging career. Then at the same time, it was the beginning of slow jigging era also in Japan. Then also I tried to learn what the slow jigging. I fish many fish with slow jigging, amberjack, Japanese yellowtail and grouper in Japan. Then I love slow jigging.
Why do you personally love slow jigging compared to other techniques?
Because speed jigging is many times misunderstood about the exact motion of lure in the water. People think if we do this much of jerking, jig is moving like this, but actually because of hydrodynamics, that kind of magic is not happening under the water.
Nice.
But in slow jigging, because of its shape, because of physics, lure is exactly moving what we can imagine on the table. Exactly in the water, it's happening the same things. Also, because of that, what we can imagine is actually happening in the water. So I can do what I want to do for the fishing, for my tactics, for my strategy, and if I can catch a fish with my statics, with my technology, with my techniques,
Nice.
that pleasure is more than
It's magic, huh?
lucky hit, because I plan this, then my plan is succeeded, it's more fun.
It's
That's-
magic.
That's why
Yeah.
I
Nice.
like slow jigging.
Nice. Why do you think slow jigging is so popular in Japan?
Because first of all, we can catch more fish, more inactive fish because of its movement of the lure. At the same time, because it's more simple, physically friendly, then even small girls can catch big fish with good technology, with good techniques. Also, it's easy to understand.
Nice.
Easy to understand, but small things can be more detailed. That maniac feature is also really good to be, spread for Japanese people. That's why slow jigging itself is really fit for Japanese mentality, but also same time it's very good fishing technology. Techniques are very good also for fishing itself.
Nice.
What are the most common mistakes beginners make when they start slow jigging?
This is very important. I'm talking about the most important things, not only for slow jigging but for fishing. So when they start to follow the lure, they don't control the line. Then, when they start jerking, they are not pushing the lure, they are not moving the lure, they are just controlling the line, start to make it straight. So people think, okay, my jig is moving. No, jig is on the bottom. And line is getting like this. Then they are now making just straight.
They don't have the tension.
Yeah, we need to make first line, make it straight, then make proper tension. So when you let the jigs fall, first of all, you have to control the line. This is first important things for beginners or even who enjoying fishing for sea bass or barracuda, whatever, making your line straight. This is the first mistake people tend to have. Then that should be improved from next time quickly.
Nice.
Second mistake, don't put any big metal parts in front of jigs. Don't put too big assist line in front of jigs. Don't put any kind of unnecessary parts in jig assist foot. This is what I really wanted to. If you have a reason to put silicone octopus, just put it, but 90% of cases I think it's not necessary. I don't think it's necessary. 90% of cases.
Nice.
Because it's killing the motion of jigs. Why we are doing slow jigging? Because motion of the jigs, precise movement is really important. But your big metal parts, unnecessary like tackle baits or some flasher is killing the jig movement. That's I want to change. Yeah.
What is the most important thing in slow jigging? The rod, the jig, or the technique?
Technique. First technique, second rod or jigs, I think. First of all, if you have techniques, you can make it line straight, then you have better knowledge, you can understand the concept of slow jigging. Then, if you are using not the proper rod, your techniques can cover the disadvantage of rod, disadvantage of jigs. Even if you do speed jigging, if you understand the concept of slow jigging, you can change it just to slow jigging style by techniques, So techniques are first important. Techniques more like knowledge. Knowledge is the most important for slow jigging, or let's say any kind of fishing. The next things, jigs or rods. Or let's say line is more important. The thickness of line, making it straight is more important. Also management of line, the knot management, making proper knot for slow jigging is more important than using really expensive rod, expensive reels. No. First knowledge, second line control, knot control, tension control. Then finally you can put your budget into like fishing rod, fishing reels, those kind of things. I believe.
What type of rod do you prefer for slow jigging?
So nowadays modern slow jigging is more like a mixed high speed, slow speed, those kind of jigging nowadays. Because so in the past, slow jigging is like make a jerk, wait 1-2 seconds for the rod to bring it back the jigs. Don't hold your rod up anymore. Just wait. Rod is bring up, jig is moving. Whoop. Whoop. It was like this. This was the original slow jigging concept made by Mr. Sato many years ago. But nowadays slow jigging is kind of mixed style, So make a first jack first, then try to put some action, pushing rod more to up, then try to make slide action. So it's like this.
So you have to customize your technique, your retrieve and anything?
Yeah, exactly. Then, so the meaning of rod is changing nowadays. So modern slow jigging rod is really more like sticky, let's say, pushing many pressure on the line and jigs. Can be used also for high speed technique, also for slow speed technique. This kind of parabolic balance is nowadays more important for slow jigging, modern techniques, I believe.
How do you choose the right weight of jigs? Depend of depth and currents.
If fish is active, if everything is right, first of all we should choose bit heavier jigs than we thought, because that's why first of all I would put little bit heavier jigs than the original plan. to check the fish condition. Because first of all, we should reach the bottom. We should feel the situation of itself. Okay, tide current is really pushing us, it's going good, or there is no tide, the jerking is really light, or okay, I can feel the fish bite or something. First of all, I have to feel the current condition, situation. Then to understand it, if we put too lightweight of jigs, we cannot feel it because it's not clear reaching the bottom. It takes more time. Line tension, we have to take care more. But the beginning, let's start with checking the condition of the sea. So I will put a little bit more heavier weight. Then if I think it's a little bit heavy, you can change it. You can change it to lighter weight. I will start like this. So in Greece, many of the cases, the tides are maximum 1 knot or 1.5 knot, right? So if it's under 200 meter or 150 meter, maximum I would choose 250 gram or 200 gram, let's say. But if the situation is like that, I will start this straightly 250 gram to check the condition. Then if I feel okay, it's too heavy, I will change it to 180 or 150 even.
Do you prefer center balance jigs or rear balance jigs?
For slow jigging, right?
Yeah.
For slow jigging, it's difficult question. Depends on the situation, let's say. But let's make it more clearly. If everything is all right, tide is going straight, wind is pushing us in the same way, then we are drifting in straight line really clearly, I just would choose more center balance jigs. But sometimes complicated situation is there. Like a bottom tide is going here, but surface current is here, then wind is turning around and we have to search the bottom first of all. We have to make a line straight first of all. Then in that situation, first of all, in any situation, we have to make line straight. This is the most important for slow jigging than action of the jigs or anything. So to make a line straight, to feel the condition and everything, then I would put more rear balance jigs to make the line straight. Yep.
Tell us some things about jig colors.
Clear or muddy. The watercolor does matter first. So if it's muddy, creamy water, like greenish or brownish, I tend to choose gold color, because gold, the wave of color is flashing more far than silver color in milky muddy situation. So in that kind of situation, I would love to use like green gold, red gold, or something like that. But in normal situation, let's say if you choose silver color, it doesn't have any problem, So it depends on, sometimes I would start red gold every single time, and because it's my standard color. Red gold, I would start from red gold, then I completely will change it to full silver, then I would put some glow color if situation is a little bit tricky. It's like this. But it's more deep than what I'm talking right now. So, but what I recommend you is, first of all, choose one color, whatever you like. It's more simple. Like if you like pink, just choose pink. If you like silver, just choose silver. Let's make it more simple. Then you can see the watercolor, you know. So first start from your favorite color. Then if you think your situation is not the correct, change it to another color. Then make another tactics hypothesis. Then make another strategy, put a different jigs. This is a really fun part of slow jigging, I think.
Can you explain to us your slow jigging technique and rhythm? And
Okay, so again, the best technique of slow jigging is line control. In any situation, first of all, I try to make a line straight. By choosing a light tackle, by choosing a light weight of jigs, making your line straight to the bottom is the best technique of slow jigging. This is the most important than jerking technique or anything. This is the most important. And second of all, depends on the target, let's say. First of all, my basic slow jigging action is 5 times quick jerk or 3 times quick jerk, then 1, 2, 3 jerking. This is the most common and standard of my action. Then what I'm trying to feel with this action is the first 5 first pitch action. I'm trying to feel if jig is not moving too much or not. If jig is moving too much like this, my first jerking is little bit random, you know. Like it will be, I will feel this kind of feeling. Then something is wrong. Maybe jig weight or line tension or line thickness is wrong. So I can feel if I'm choosing right tackle or not with this first jerking. Then after that 1, 2 long fall action, I can feel how much tide is going under the bottom. If tide is going really fast, after long jerk, my line will get straight really fast because current is pushing the jigs, you know. Then I can feel how much current is on the bottom. I can feel, you know, I should put more heavier jigs or not. Then this basic action, first of all, I would put to understand the current situation. Then second of all, if fish is not biting the jigs with this basic action, first of all, there are 2 possibilities. Fish are not active enough to react the jigs, or fish is just staying more in the bottom. Then I have to think about it, checking the sonar radar reaction. If there is a fish, I can see. If there is a bait fish, if there is a big fish marker, but still jig is not bited, what's the problem? The fish is not finding the jigs. In that case, maybe we should do maybe 10 more times fast action to make them react. Then we do slow style jigging like this. Or you can make more speed combination to make them react, you know. So this is first tactics. First of all, understand the current situation, then check the radar, check the sonar, imagine what kind of situation is under the bottom, then what is necessary, you have to think about it. Then second situation, fish doesn't want to move up. Even we are doing slow jigging, sometimes fish doesn't move 5 meters above the bottom. This is the current situation. So in that case, it's risky. If it's for grouper or amberjack, it's really risky. But I just start from slow jerking. But it does mean when the big fish hits, you really have to fight hard because your jig is just 1 meter, 2 meters above the bottom. Then if big grouper, big amberjack bites, it's really tough fight. It will be a tough fight, yo.
how important is the boat positioning and drifting when you slow jigging?
So the most important thing is, again, with any kind of technique, with boat position, we have to make the line straight. So this is the most important thing. So if you see the line is going left, you have to change the boat position more to the right side to make your line straight. Otherwise, your line will pulling up your jigs in unnecessary position. Then you cannot make proper action. This is a situation. So any kind of situation, if you do slow jigging, making a line straight by boat position is the most important thing.
What are the main species that you target in Japan?
Amberjack, first most popular target for slow jigging is amberjack. Second is some rockfish, grouper. Then nowadays even we are targeting sea trout, salmon by slow jigging in ocean. Then nowadays it's really getting popular to do slow jigging for tunas too, yes.
What is the most memorable fish you caught with slow jigging?
Amberjack. It was P1.5. Then I was targeting just for small groupers or something. Then suddenly 8 kilo, 9 kilo amberjack hit my lure on the bottom. Then fight was really hard. It's really tough, but I somehow managed it on the boat. So that techniques, but I could see at the moment the amberjack shadow on the later. Then I changed my tactics for amberjack jerking style and everything. Then amberjack hit. Then 15 minutes fight. It was 15 minutes fight, but I finally managed to run the good size amberjack on the boat. That was the most, like, tactically and technique wise, and because of that really hard fight, it stays in my brain.
Nice. Is there a special story from your fishing trips you want to share with us?
Any kind of fishing trip, or any kind of fishing?
For slow jigging, of course.
For slow jigging. So I'm living in Hiroshima. Then Hiroshima, that area has so many islands. Because of geographical structure, the current is really fast. Sometimes it can be 6 knots.
6 knots?
6 knots. Sometimes it can be 2, 3 knots. 2 knots is normal. The 1 knot is nothing for us. In that kind of situation, we have to do from 80 meters to 30 meters, that really sharp drop off by slow jigging. So boat is moving from 80 meter to 30 meter, then in 2 knots, we have to do slow jigging style to catch a Japanese yellowtail kingfish. Imagine how difficult to manage the line straight, how difficult to make a proper action by pushed by that much of current. It's really difficult. It's more technical, but I learned, let me say, one of the most difficult type of slow jigging in Hiroshima, Japan. That's why I'm trusting my skill of jigging, how to manage the line, how to manage the controlling of the jigs. It's my local fishing. It's my fishing since I was doing my childhood, but that's not the trip, that's my best fishing, best slow jigging fishing all over the world.
What advice will you give to new anglers who want to start a slow jigging technique?
The basics. Basics is the most important. Basic knowledge. How to let it fall the jigs, how to tie the knot, how to make a knot to the ling, what kind of assist hook you should choose. This basic knowledge will not make a lie to you. Then nowadays, let me say, so many social media, so many YouTube video, let's say, like influencers YouTube video is showing just really shocking moments or really big moment for fishermen. Then young fisherman tends to do those kind of fishing just by watching those kind of video, then they try to imitate it. But just start from basics. Then that will really help you in any kind of fishing, also for slow jigging too. So, but that's the most fun part of fishing, I believe. When I was a child at home, I was testing my knot many times. I made 100 times at home to reach the proper strength of my knot and everything. That was more fun part. Then after those learning part, when you get a big fish with your technology, with your techniques, with your knowledge, that's the most best part of fishing. So young fishermen, don't skip this part. Like, try to learn from basics. Then those basics will help you in the future. 5 years later, 10 years later, if you can be a good fisherman, good knowledge, good technique fisherman or not, it depends on this basic part.
Okay. If someone wants to buy only one jig to start slow jigging,
I'm honest person. So I'm from BlueBlue. That's why I would like to say spin bit too. But let me say, I more respect the legend of slow jigging history. So there are many jigs, more than 500 slow jigs in Japanese market. Then if you have to choose one jigs, sorry my boss of BlueBlue, I apologize, but let me say, the jigs Mr. Sato made, like Calypso, or my ultimate favorite is SFC Lecter, or CB1 Zero Slow Skip. Those three jigs, those made Japanese slow jigging history. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we started from there. Then original is always the original. That's the most important.
nice.
Many modern jigs are made in the history in fishing industry nowadays, but still originals are originals. So I recommend 3 jigs.
Nice.
Let me say, the jigs Mr. Sato made, Calypso, or SFC, Seafloor Control Lecter, or CB1 01 Slow Skip.
What do you think is the future of slow jigging around the world?
So it's changing a lot. Slow jigging style itself is changing a lot nowadays. Then it's not bad things. Original slow jigging is not like the modern slow jigging style, but because of fishermen's demand, it's changing a lot. Then really good thing is in slow jigging, those good fishermen wants to learn more, then wants to change it more. Then fishing technique is changing, reel, line is evolving a lot. So the future is bright, really good.
Would you like to fishing in Greece someday?
So first of all, I have to visit Creta
Yeah,
to
of
make
course.
slow jigging.
I have already invited Koki.
That's the must.
Yeah.
That's the things I'm really looking for in the future. Then I love Greece, first of all. Like people, so friendly, beautiful nature, beautiful culture, and everything is beautiful. I love Greece, so I'm coming here more often, I believe. Let's enjoy fishing together.
What is your opinion about the level of Greek anglers?
So, to be honest, it's high. It's higher than European average, I believe. Because Greek anglers really like to talk, also really like to listen. They are, keen to hear the new method the basics and everything. They are like, they would love to learn. This is not what I experienced in other European country, let's say. In some country, let's say, if I try to teach something really basics, they don't want to listen. They don't want to listen. But whenever I come to Greece, then when I start to talk about the fishing techniques and everything, they love to listen. And this is really good things, you know. They love to listen, they love to learn. Then at the results, like Greek fisherman's level is increasing gradually. That's from bottom of my heart I'm feeling about the fishing, you know, situation in Greece. Then it's high, quite high.
Yeah, nice. Do you have a message for anglers watching this interview?
So, the basics. If you go any kind of fishing, big game, light game, ultra light, area trout, always the basics will help you. Basics is always the goal. So that's the most important message I would like to show you. Nowadays, social media is showing many things, many wow things, but even that, basics is the goal for anyone, any situation. That's the most important message I would like to share with you today.
So, thank you very much for searching this knowledge.
Thank you so much.
So,
Γεια σας. Ευχαριστώ. Bye bye.
bye bye.